Pit was added as a brand new character in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. He was first shown off in Brawl's first ever reveal trailer, and choosing Pit for Brawl was quite a random addition, especially at the time. His only iteration in Smash was as a trophy in Melee. Dear God, quite a glow up, am I right? A complete redesign that truly didn't flesh out his personality until Smash 4, arguably. Once Kid Icarus Uprising came out, that's where you saw a lot of the more modern day Kid Icarus characters and the personality that is seen in Ultimate, for example. But to put it in perspective, Pit was such a random choice because he was a relatively niche character that had a game that had a long period where people considered the series to be dead. Maybe you could say it's still dead in a way, waiting to be revived once again, but it is what it is. Pit has access to one of the best projectiles in the game, being his neutral beam. Bow is extremely fast. It charges and has plenty of mobility and range. It can cover nearly the entire stage, and Pit has plenty of control on where the arrow goes, so it can stop approaches and control neutral pretty well. And Pit also has one of the best recoveries in the game, and this is Brawl we're talking about. This means it's actually kind of busted in a really silly way, as Pit has access to not 1, 2, 3 mid-air jumps that have decent amounts of mobility, and they slapped a glide on his kit because, he has wings, I guess. Every character that has wings has a glide almost in this game. And glides were incredibly busted at the time. They lasted for an extremely long period and they were hard to gimp. And Pit's was one of the best glides in the game, as this immensely improved his survivability. And wait, there was more. He had his up special, which was incredible. Sure, the move doesn't have any hitboxes on it, and sure, Pit, if he gets hit out of it, he can die, but it has high amounts of mobility and Pit can move in any direction while using it. His recovery options are quite good. He can go through each side of Temple like it's no problem. He can stop projectiles, he can interrupt them, and pushes Pit away from items. And in Brawl, you could actually do wing dashing, which could be used for spacing and moving or picking up items without Pit even having a pickup animation. So that's why you see people do this all the time. You can even potentially do footstool mix-ups out of it. His down special, the Mirror Shield, it reflects incoming attacks and even protect him, and it can flip opponents around similar to a Mario Cape, which means, yeah, you can gimp with this bad boy, okay? And his side special, the most annoying voice clip in the game. This move can deflect any incoming attacks, and it does 1 to 2%. It's not a very good attack. In my opinion, it's not very interesting. I'm glad they completely replaced it in Smash 4, and it does have a lot of lag. There is some niche usage for it. Many of Pit's attacks have actually very quick startup, like his jab, forward tilt, which is a KO tool, up tilt, which can be a combo tool for Pit, and it has 3 hits on it that come out at frame 2. This makes the move extremely quick, and if you manage to link it into its other hits, it's actually the fastest up tilt in the game and it has great utility. Down tilt, Pit swipes on the ground, and it's an excellent combo starting tool, and you can even meteor smash for whatever reason, give that a shot. Dash attack is a pretty average dash attack. He does a simple swipe forward, and the hit does a small amount of damage. Pit's forward smash is a double hit attack, and it's similar to Link's. It is actually one of the fastest forward smashes in the whole series. Yes, not a single forward smash comes out faster, which is frame 6. The move actually does a decent amount of damage, where both hits can deal 19%. Up smash, again similar to Link's, deals 3 hits, and Pit's actually faster as it. The first hit of up smash is actually a spike, but despite this, it's easy to escape out of and doesn't have a lot of utility. Down smash hits on both sides, and again similar to Link here again. I swear Sakurai must have used Link as a base for Pit because they have a lot of similar moves. Conspiracy over though. In neutral air, Pit will spin his blades and they're not very strong, but they can beat weak projectiles. Forward air is potential edge guarding tool, dealing 15%. Its startup is not the best, but it's a decent attack. Back air is similar to forward air, dealing 15% on the clean hit, and it's actually one of the strongest back airs in the game, dealing the most amount of knockback out of all of Pit's aerials. Up air deals 6 hits, and this is difficult to actually use out of all of his aerials, but if you want to give it a shot, be my guest. And down air, despite it looking like a spike, actually launches the opponents upward, which is kind of the opposite of how you would think a down air is supposed to hit the opponent, but whatever, that's besides the point. Remember his glide? Well, he has a glide attack, and yes, he can attack out of this move. It is actually one of Pit's strongest attacks, and it has a minimal amounts of landing lag, so this move, if linked correctly, can be rewarding. Pit's grab inputs are decent. Although he doesn't have any KO throws, his down throw, up throw, and back throw, and forward throw can keep the opponents from a distance. Pit is actually one of the best characters in the game at camping in Brawl, because his ability to abuse the legend hinge ability and having one of the best projectiles in the game, and also his moves are relatively safe. You get the point. Despite Pit looking like a decent character on paper though, his biggest flaw is really he sucks at KOing. It is actually pretty across the board on his entire moveset. While he does have some KO power here and there, they're far from being the best tools in his kit, and despite this, they're relatively standard attacks. And despite Pit having a blade, you might think, oh, he must have lots of range, right? Well, he is leaving a lot to be desired, as Pit does have to scrap quite a bit to use his most damaging and strongest moves. So while Pit can camp and build percent, in order to get the kill, he has to approach and try to close out the stock, which is usually where it gets harder for him. Overall, Pit has decent matchups in this game, but his results were relatively mixed. In Japan, Pit was actually seen as more of a meta presence, and they actually placed the character in the A tier. But in the West, Pit didn't have as good of results, and pretty much the whole lifespan was seen in the exact same area as being a mid tier. And gee, I wonder if this is going to be a pattern here, as Brawl Pit was ranked at 17th in the C tier. Pit in Smash 4 changed extensively. A new voice actor, which actually fits the character much better, and this is straight from Kid Icarus Uprising. Yeah, say goodbye to the Brawl Pit memes. Having a new updated visual design to represent the previous game that just came out, which automatically is going to give Pit more personality, and Pit still has quick frame data on all of his moves. Great tools for comboing, as his moves come out no less than frame 10 of startup. Pit is actually faster walk and dash speed wise while being slightly heavier, going from 94 to 96, and having a less laggy air dodge while having less duration. His mid-air jumps have less relative height multiplier, which limits Pit's jump height mobility, and his spot dodge has less duration. Pit has a new jab infinite, and many of his moves have new animations like forward tilt, which extends further while having less startup, and up tilt is similar, but it has nerf startup lag and deals less damage. Its first hit launches at a better angle for comboing and has a larger hitbox. Down tilt got nerfed pretty hard, having increased end lag and less duration, damage, knockback, and its angle change is less useful for combos. Dash attack also got a new animation, and it covers more distance, having more follow-up potential this time around due to its lessened end lag. Forward smash has larger hitboxes and has significantly more range while having more startup and end lag and a shorter duration. Up smash follows a similar footstep to the previous move, having startup buffs while having increased lag, and up smash even has smaller hitboxes, which allows the opponents to actually crouch under the move. Yes, pretty bad. Down smash has similar hitbox placements and more KO potential, and its angle is not really good for KOing this time around, at least like it was in Brawl. His nair has a higher amount of hit lag, which makes it easier to DI out of. Forward air also has less startup and much more end lag, and it's no longer as good of a KO tool because now it has a multi-hit aspect to it, making it easier to escape out of. Back air is also much weaker in this game because it has a much longer animation with more startup and end lag and dealing less damage. Up air, while having more range and having looping hits now, it does have more priority and is a more reliable combo tool, while again still having increased startup and end lag. You've seen the pattern here. His grab has less startup and end lag, but they did give it more range, so there is that. All of his aerials are actually capable of auto-canceling on a short hop, and you combine this with his more fluid moveset in this game, at least in some areas. As I mentioned in Brawl, Pit had a ridiculous recovery, and I hate to alarm you as, yeah, the recovery did get nerfed. But despite this pretty obvious change, if you want to balance him, they started to give him some more neutral recovery options from scratch, as his up special has been removed, but now Pit has a more standard up special. While lacking hitbox around it, it's not nearly as safe. Even the Brawl version lacked hitboxes, but it's still a problem here, and Pit's up special can actually be angled this time around, and you can choose a variety of directions of where Pit goes, which makes it actually really solid for snapping ledge. And also, since grabbing ledges is much easier in Smash 4, this means it's still a decent recovery. And yes, they fixed the bug of Pit doesn't immediately die out of getting hit on this move, so there is that. Pit also has a brand new side special, no more hi-ya. And the move actually is a strong KO tool, although it does have significant amounts of lag, and the angle the move sends at is directly upward. And this move can even be a potential recovery tool. It isn't even that strong of a tool for shield pressuring anymore, as it gains more frames of super armor, so the move deflects projectiles instead of reflecting them. But to be honest, Pit has a better tool when it comes to dealing with projectiles with his buffed down special, Guardian Orbit, another new iteration of a move, as functionally similar to Mirror Shield, but it now covers both sides of Pit, and the shield is much larger this time around, making it more effective at protecting Pit. It even has a slight push effect on this move. However, it was considerably nerfed, having more startup and end lag, no longer being able to gain super armor on startup, and it can only be held for 80 frames instead of 600, and it could also be destroyed. Pit's neutral B has an updated animation, having less end lag in the air, but the overall nerf is to its utility on the ground. It has much more lag and definitely limits its follow-up potential, dealing less damage, traveling slower. Pit's grab game has been buffed considerably this time around, as now he actually has a more consistent combo game with his grabs, down throw being a clear really good throw for comboing. Forward throw, it has some KO power this time around, and down air becoming a meteor smash. It has a less floaty double jump, the removal of gliding, down special getting nerfed, and while he does have some improvements, there is definitely lots of nerfs here, and you can truly just see how a lot of his strongest tools did get toned down in this game. His back air, more specifically, was one of the strongest back airs in the game to just being a very average move. And while recoveries have been buffed in Smash 4, Pit really struggled to edge guard more because many characters' recoveries are buffed too, and even with Rage, Pit isn't really going to abuse this mechanic in any specific way because he doesn't have any cheesy moves in his moveset. He doesn't really get to abuse Rage because of this, because his KO potential is already just kind of mediocre even in this game. So one of the flaws from Brawl is still a apparent part of Pit's moveset in Smash 4, and overall this leads to Pit still being a character with plenty of strengths but also plenty of weaknesses, and this has led to him being a jack of all trades, but unfortunately a master of none, as many people feel like this version of Pit was actually nerfed too hard because his strengths were toned down too. While the buffs are definitely nice, they aren't overall gonna make Pit the top tier character that I think people imagine him to maybe be if he got buffed more. He just isn't in this game. Pit did gain a Echo Fighter, or I guess this time around we can call him a clone character, being Dark Pit. Unlike other characters who have differences, Dark Pit only has a handful of differences. He is mostly the exact same character as Pit. He does have a neutral special that has less mobility but dealing more damage and knockback, similar to side special. This is probably the biggest change that Dark Pit received, was the fact that his side special is significantly more powerful damage and knockback wise, having an electric effect, also being safer on shield, having more diagonal trajectory, which actually makes it much better at killing. Also, they have a different jab hit that has slightly different quirks. There's a smaller hitbox, which makes it easier to escape out of, and forward tilt does have less base knockback, which makes it less beneficial for KOing. Overall, they are almost exactly the same, and even if their taunts are slightly different, they're the same exact speed and duration, which is why Dark Pit is considered a more matchup-specific variant of Pit. In competitive play, Pit was considered a mid-tier character, especially because of just the very sparse results for Pit in Smash 4. He would have more of a meta presence as a handful of people would begin to give Pit a chance, which is why he was a lot higher on the first tier list of the game, and Dark Pit was actually seen as almost in the same tier as Pit. Pit's viability was questioned in the DLC era because while Pit does do well against certain characters, many of these DLC characters just showed that Pit was just not on their same level, showing that he wasn't consistent enough, especially with dealing out KO power. Many characters like Corrin, Cloud, and Bayonetta, which led to Pit falling off many tier lists later, going from all the way to 24 to 32. Dark Pit was actually ranked lower than Pit at one point, but this is before people just realized that both characters are pretty much exactly the same. Now in Ultimate, Pit was actually buffed to the transition to this game. Almost all aspects of his moveset have been improved, generally is benefiting from many of the gameplay buffs in this game. Finally give Pit somewhat decent KO power, and still being a very beginner-friendly character with 3 jumps. Dark Pit also exists in Smash Ultimate. In Smash 4, technically Dark Pit had more differences compared to the Ultimate iteration, as they did make his jab finisher and forward tilt the exact same as Pit now. They don't have any differences in this area anymore. So really they only have 2 differences now, being the neutral B and side special, which still function the same as in Smash 4. And Dark Pit's side special deals more damage and knockback, making it better at clearing out stocks. And neutral B actually deals more damage on it, and it launches opponents at a more favorable angle, allowing it for KOs or having increased speed. Officially being renamed as a Echo Fighter, but having the exact same differences that Pit has in Ultimate. He was definitely buffed in this game, as this was truly where the engine could show that Pit definitely could metaphorically stretch his wings in this game. Ultimate is a much speedier engine, having a universal 3-frame jump squat, while all the grabs across the board being weaker, but aerials have been buffed as well, majorly being improved during this time period as the game's frame data wise and strengths buffed many sword characters, greatly enjoying a lot of these quicker frame data on their aerials, also being complemented with the sword's more disjointed hitboxes. So Pit and Dark Pit fit under this umbrella of characters that enjoy the natural buffs to sword characters. And Pit also enjoyed some KO improvements, which is something he desperately needed in Smash 4, having buffs to his dash attack, back air, down air, side special, and down smash. Pit also has his neutral tools that are also effective at damage building, like his aerials and his neutral B, nair, up air, forward air. They all deal more damage. Up air finally became a KO tool this time around. Up tilt and down tilt have improved combo potential due to their angles being changed and having less end lag. Jab Infinite is better at linking into its later hits. Neutral B and side special have improved speed, and the directional air dodge is a nice recovery buff as his aerial game and projectile game were just more reliable in Smash Ultimate. The nerfs to Rage in Ultimate didn't really affect Pit that much because he didn't rely on it that heavily in Smash 4 anyways, but there were nerfs present too. As I mentioned, grabs being universally nerfed in Ultimate slightly hurt Pit, end lag and startup on his dash and pivot grab, and moves like down special have less HP and they shrink faster. Up tilt has less range, but in my opinion, Pit's strengths were actually better in this game and pretty much being the same stylistically from Smash 4, so if you liked him in that game, he's essentially a better iteration of the character in this game, aside from some small range nerfs to his grab. But this also means he's still a jack of all trades while being a master of none. Comparatively, many other characters have been buffed too, and they've been just buffed way more than Pit has. He still has the KO power issue and vulnerable to when characters break through his defenses. Overall, Pit is buffed in this game, but these are very marginal buffs compared to the rest of the cast of Ultimate. And Pit and his Echo Fighter Dark Pit have been seen as, yes, they are improved in Smash 4, but they didn't help their results in competitive play that much. As a pair, they were seen as rather mediocre characters, still not having the cheese factor that many people just feel like they're lacking. They pretty much are going to rely on building percent and then looking for a KO option, which you could say every single character is looking for, but for Pit, it's just harder to really get to the KO. Many DLC fighters can transform into different characters. They can optimize their moveset. They have a full essay of moves and are just beasts at stage control. And Pit is just really not like that at all. He is a lot harder to sell compared to these characters that are much higher than him. And yes, Pit does have decent results, but these results have led to people just dropping him later on. And top players actually did give him a shot, placing at top 8, but the character has not been shown strong enough to really hold this long term. And this was largely seen as just Pit kind of doing the same thing in Smash Ultimate. Now the thing about Smash 4 Pit is he was in the middle of a moveset rework. On this level, he just wasn't seen as drastically improved as a character. In fact, despite him being considerably better in some areas, he just isn't that much better. And he did get a lot of nerfs from Brawl as well, as they removed plenty of his advanced tech that he had in that game, while also trying to redefine his moveset. He gained a lot of recovery nerfs. He lost his strong glide attack. He has toned down KO power, and yes, his grab game is actually pretty decent in this game, but it just really doesn't offset his really awful KO power, which is why Pit is just seen as a mid-tier. The Brawl iteration of the character actually was not as bad. Like I mentioned, he actually had some advanced techs that definitely improved him, like with his up special. He had one of the best recoveries in the game. His projectile was really spammy and it was probably in its peak in this game. Despite this though, he was still seen as a relative mid-tier character, but some people do say he's underrated in this game. The strongest iteration of the character, maybe not by a lot, because to be real, every single iteration of Pit is a mid-tier. He does have more KO power, especially compared to Brawl, and they did streamline his moveset by buffing his neutral special, his aerials, and yes, his grab game is worse, but I think that's a valid trade. In this iteration of Pit having some decent results in tournament, which is why I'd say the Ultimate iteration is probably the best. In a lot of ways, he is a relatively basic character compared to a lot of Ultimate's later iterations, and many people feel like Pit just doesn't have what he truly needs as a character. Alright you guys, thank you guys for watching the video. There's a Patreon down below if you guys want to support the channel and get the videos early. There's also a Discord down below and an Instagram. Thank you guys. Take care. Peace out.